few mini mixes. It happens.
Okay, so members of Congress, you all been exposed to a blinding litany of facts and doom and gloom predictions about the future and the like. You could have made most of these statements 30 years ago. The numbers would have been different, but the statements would have been the same. The case of the governor quote in New Hampshire was a really good one that was said in 2008. Then New Hampshire saw Irene devastated in 2011, and Superstorm Sandy having a significant impact in 2012. So the governor says we need to do something, and nothing is done. New Hampshire didn't do shit to mitigate itself for these future things, which did in fact come. So the issue is, did anything convince you that we should do anything? Anything at all, anything any group said, any issue anybody raised, convince you that A, there's a problem, and B, we really should do something about it, and that we can do something about it effectively? What? I'm not convinced by anything. I heard one interesting thing, which we'll get to later, but none of this would convince me. Why does it convince you? You're all biased, you're predisposed to believe that we should act and do this. But the point is that as a nation, we are not doing anything. So there must be strong opposition to making the kind of investments that are needed. So, again, what convinces you that we should make an investment to, why aren't we doing it? Why don't we care? You don't have a clue about this, you can't be effective in anything. I mean, this is the issue. It's playing out, the similar issue is playing out in front of you in real life as we speak. Over the weekend, it's exactly the same mentality, exactly the same process that's going on. Yeah.
Well, people spend hundreds of dollars in lottery tickets on like a less than even possible chance that they'll actually win it. So people are way more inclined to take the chance of like, oh, well, it's not very likely that a climate disaster is going to occur.
Right. Yeah, so there's a lot of numerical education that's needed about simple probability that, for instance, a 2% disaster will happen in your lifetime.
I think there's a sense that like climate change mitigation is inherently like antithetical to business interests, and so I thought the idea of brand partnerships was at least interesting and new because
Yeah, me
it
too.
like combined
Yeah.
those things.
That's been talked about elsewhere. That's a really good, it's one of the biggest win-win propositions you have out here, because now all of a sudden the brand Costco is going to be viewed favorably in the community because it's going to intrinsically help the community. People will shop there because of that. Businesses have absolutely nothing to lose by giving their resources to help communities recover from disasters. That never happens in the United States, so we don't have any progressive-looking businesses outside of Google. They're a big exception. So what are some other reasons why you think we're not doing anything? Are all these threats just idle threats that you hear? Or they're not going to impact you personally or your state, your voters?
I mean, I think that kind of a lack of scientific education makes it easy to dismiss these weather events as not being caused by climate change.
So how does science education help?
I mean, if you understand the actual science, you understand that it is being caused by climate change. It's not just normal.
Yeah, but how does that help with mitigation and disaster relief and funding and redirecting resources?
Well, if
To have an intellectual understanding of it.
if you're a senator and you understand the science, then you're more likely to vote
Who
for
the
it.
hell's going to vote for those people in the first place? When's the last time you saw a scientist in Congress? Why won't people vote for scientists?
I mean, I have kind of a biased perspective, but I think there's a communication breakdown between like communicators and scientific facts. Like
Totally.
we don't know how to say these things in a way that like resonates with people or that people will even listen.
Well, of course, that's been true forever. It's been true since Socrates. But
And no one has any idea how to fix that.
that's not true. People have ideas. We're not very good at implementing. People have ideas. Now, that's not really the issue. Why won't you elect a scientist for Congress? Why won't your parents do it? Ask your parents why they wouldn't do it. There's one problem that people have with scientists. And scientists have done very little to alleviate this problem. Look, everybody thinks scientists don't give a shit about anything. We don't care about you. We don't care about anything, humanity. We live in this ivory tower view of the world. We just tinker around in our own little mental discipline. We have no interest in, in engaging with the rest of the world. We are the most inhumane people on the planet. It's exactly why they don't get elected to public office. Because we don't give a shit about you. Because that's the collective view of science. And so that's been an impasse for quite a long time. And you could just raise the simple question, gee, has the government ever taken a scientific process to problem solving? Besides never? Why not? Because that process can actually work. So you live in the most absurd of times for lots of reasons, but that's one of them. Is we've actually never tried to deal with these kinds of national problems from a systems point of view, ever. I thought the point about California was good, and quite true. California used to be the 5th highest GDP thing in the world. I don't think it's the 5th highest, it's probably in the top 10. California is an extreme, the rest of the U.S. doesn't really matter. It's really California that matters. And so California, for instance, well, I don't know, they had 3 years of excessive drought. What do you think they actually accomplished in those 3 years, besides bitching and moaning? How many wastewater treatments did they build in those 3 years? How many changed irrigation policies did they have? How accountable were various water restrictions done? They built 0 nuclear power desalination plants in those 3 years. They decided to just drill to mine the California aqueduct, which is absolutely the worst thing to do. This is what I'm getting at, right? When you remove all this science from the process, you end up doing the most stupid thing 90% of the time. So the most stupid thing that California could do is to tap their aquifer more. Why? Because the recharge time in the aquifer is about 50 or 60 years. So yeah, you can pump it all out to temporarily solve your drought for 2 years, and then I guarantee you that you have shut down California. Because all those 20 million people have 0 water now for 50 years. But that's what the course they were on. And if it weren't for this relatively miracle precipitation event happened from the atmospheric river at Pine Mountain Express, they would still be on this course to drilling their way out of the problem, in the same way that our mentality is to drill our way out of any problem. The earth is full of resources we haven't tapped yet. So let's put all our money into tapping untapped resources. Indeed, the best investment you could have made over the last 5 years was to invest your money in some oil wellhead exploration company. They made more money than anybody else. Their growth rate is because that's what we're doing. We are so desperate, we're going everywhere on the planet with a drill in the ground, see what happens. Right? So again, that's not thinking about things like a system. So climate change has got to be presented by the scientific community and by policymakers as a threat on the entire system in exactly the same way that the global meltdown was a collapse of a system. That actually had some impact when people started looking at it from the system point of view. Regulations changed, understanding changed. But we don't present climate change like that. It's always that region, that disaster, or that region, or that disaster, or it's not global warming, it's global drought, whatever. No, the entire system is being compromised, and as we learn later in this course, the biggest example of this compromise is the extinction of species on the planet. It's occurring at a much more alarming rate than you think. There's a guy named E.O. Wilson, who's about 87, 88 now. In my opinion, he's the best thinker of the 20th century. He's a psychologist at Harvard. written lots of interesting books, knows more about ant colonies than anybody else in the universe. He was just interviewed, there's a podcast where he talks about it, the whole system and everything. And in his book 2 years ago, he basically convincingly shows that our business as usual trajectory is we're going to extinct half of all high functioning mammals, half of them by the year 2100. Which operationally makes us God, because only God can do that. And this perspective is just never brought to bear on this entire issue in which consumption is driving. So you have to be aggressive in your message. You have to, it's everybody in this room's fault. It's all consumers' fault that this is happening. There's a moral dimension to this, which some group raised. Tease that out more in your last assignment for this class, which has to be driven into first the minds of young children and up to chain, because we don't have the moral right to extinct half the species on the planet. Great. See you Thursday.